Quick question. Can you tell me the formula for getting rich? Go on. Say it in your head. Spend less than you earn. Invest the difference. Do that for a long time. Easy, right? Most people can say this in about 5 seconds. I bet you just did too. Here's the strange part. Almost everyone knows this formula. Schools don't even teach it that well, and people still know it. Your uncle knows it. Your coworker knows it. The guy who posts memes about being broke knows it. And yet, most of these same people are not rich. Not even close. They know the words, but their bank account tells a different story. So here's the real question, the one nobody likes to sit with. If everyone already knows the formula, why does almost nobody actually get there? Why do smart people, careful people, people who read the books and watch the videos, still end up stuck? What is actually stopping them? We're going to answer that. But first, let's name the thing we're dealing with. I call it the simplicity gap. It's the space between knowing something and doing something, and it's much wider than people think. Money advice sounds simple because it is simple. But simple is not the same as easy. That gap is where most people quietly get stuck, year after year, without even noticing it. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly where this gap lives in your own life. You'll understand why it feels harder than it should, even though the math is basic. And most importantly, you'll know what actually closes it. Let's slow down and look at this formula again, because it really is just one sentence. Earn money. Spend less than you earn. Take that leftover money and invest it. Then leave it alone for a long time. That's it. That's the whole thing. You could write it on a sticky note. And that's exactly where the trouble starts. Because when something fits on a sticky note, our brain does something sneaky. It hears simple, and it quietly swaps in the word easy. But simple and easy are not the same thing. Not even close. Think about it this way. Lifting a weight over your head is a simple movement. Anyone can understand it in 2 seconds. Bend your knees, grip the bar, stand up straight. But ask someone to do that with 300 pounds on the bar, and suddenly simple feels like a joke someone is playing on them. The instructions didn't get harder. The doing did. Money works the same way. The formula is simple. Living it out, month after month, year after year, when life keeps throwing bills and boredom and bad days at you, that part is hard. Nobody explains that difference clearly enough, so people walk in expecting easy, and they get hard instead. Then they feel like something is wrong with them. Here's where it splits into 2 kinds of people. The first group hears the formula, tries it for a few months, and gets frustrated when they are not rich yet. They expected fast results because the plan sounded so simple. When the results don't show up quickly, they assume the formula is broken, or they are broken. So they quit and go looking for something more complicated, because surely something this important needs to be harder than this. The second group never even starts. They hear earn, spend less, invest, wait, and think, that can't possibly be it. That sounds too basic to actually make someone rich. There has to be a secret, a trick, some hidden formula the wealthy people are keeping quiet. So they spend years chasing complicated answers to a question that already had a simple one. Both groups make the same mistake. They judge the formula by how it sounds instead of what it takes to live out. And that mistake is not about being lazy or foolish. It's completely human. Our brains like to match effort to how something sounds, not to how it actually plays out in real life. This is the real shape of the simplicity gap. It's not that the formula is missing a step. It's that the formula tells you what to do, but says nothing about how much patience, boredom, and quiet discipline it will take to actually do it. That gap between the sentence and the years it takes to live it out, that's where almost everyone gets stuck. Let's not just take my word for it. Let's look at the numbers, because they tell a story that should honestly make more noise than it does. Start here. According to the latest Federal Reserve survey of consumer finances, 46% of Americans have no retirement savings at all, and 43% of working-age adults have no balance in a 401k, IRA, or any pension plan. Read that again. Almost half. Not a little behind. 0. Nothing. And this isn't a group that never heard the advice to save. Most of them have heard it 100 times. It gets worse the closer you look. Nearly 57 million people don't even have access to a retirement plan at work, which is part of the problem. Sure. But access isn't the whole story. Because even among people who do have access, plenty still aren't using it well. The personal savings rate has actually been falling, dropping to 3.7% in early 2026, down from 5.2% the year before. People are owning more on paper, and still saving less. That's not a knowledge problem. That's the gap in action. Here's one that really gets me. A Gallup-related AARP survey found that 20% of adults over 50 have no retirement savings, and 61% of that same group say they are worried they won't have enough money for retirement. So they know. They are worried about it. Worry means awareness. It means they understand the stakes. And still, the saving didn't happen. This is the part that should bother you a little, in a good way. This isn't a story about ignorant people who never got the memo. Since 2023, an average of 62% of Americans report owning stock, which tells you plenty of people do understand investing is part of the plan. They know the formula. Earn, save, invest, wait. They can say it out loud right now if you ask them. But knowing it and living it turned out to be two completely different jobs. And the data doesn't lie about which one is harder. Let me show you two people. I'll call them Noah Kevin and Doer Dana. Made up names, but the math is real. So stick with me. Kevin knows the formula cold. Ask him anything about investing, and he'll give you a smart answer. He reads the articles. He watches the videos. He nods along every time someone says just invest consistently. But Kevin's actual investing looks like this. He puts in $200 one month, then skips 4 months because life got busy. He starts again after a New Year's resolution, stops again in March. Over 20 years, Kevin invests here and there, maybe 7 years out of 20, whenever he remembers or feels motivated. Dana is different, and honestly, less impressive on paper. Dana doesn't know as much as Kevin. Dana couldn't explain a bond if you asked. But every single month, Dana puts in $200. Same amount. No skipping, no waiting for the right time, no pausing during a bad month. Just $200 every month for 20 straight years. Here's where it gets interesting. Let's say both of their money grows at a steady 7% a year, which is a fair long-term number for the stock market. Kevin, with his 7 scattered years of investing, ends up with around $20,000 after 20 years. Not nothing, but not much either, considering how long 20 years actually is. Dana, doing the same $200 every month without fail, ends up with just over $104,000. Read those two numbers side by side. Kevin knew more. Dana did more. And the gap between them isn't small. It's 5 times bigger, just from consistency alone. Now here's the part that really matters. Notice where the big gap opens up. In the first 5 or 6 years, Kevin and Dana don't look that different. A few $1,000s apart. Nothing dramatic. The real separation happens later, usually somewhere around year 12 or 15, when Dana's steady contributions start earning interest on interest on interest, while Kevin's stop-and-start money never gets the chance to build that same momentum. This is the quiet trick nobody tells you about money. It doesn't reward the person who understands it best. It rewards the person who shows up for it most. Compounding doesn't care how many books you've read. It only cares whether the money was actually sitting there, growing, month after month, without interruption. Kevin isn't lazy. He isn't foolish. He just believed that knowing the plan was basically the same as running it. Dana never made that mistake, mostly by accident. And that one difference is worth $80,000. Here's the sneaky part nobody warns you about. Learning about money feels almost exactly like handling your money. And that's not an accident of your personality. It's just how brains work. Think about it. You watch a video about index funds. You feel a little rush, like you just leveled up. You read an article about compound interest and nod along, thinking, yeah, I get this. You argue with your cousin about whether real estate or stocks are the better investment, and you feel sharp, informed, on top of things. All of that feels productive. It feels like progress. Your brain lights up the same way it would if you had actually opened an account and put money in. But here's the catch. Watching a video about investing and actually investing are two completely different actions. One takes 15 minutes on the couch. The other takes opening an app, picking a number, and sending real money away from your checking account on a day when you'd rather spend it on something else. Your brain doesn't naturally tell the difference between those two things, because both of them create the same feeling. I'm handling this. This is why so many people walk around feeling financially responsible, while their bank account tells a completely different story. It's not that they are lying to themselves on purpose. It's that awareness genuinely feels like action from the inside. Reading 10 articles about investing gives you the same warm, capable feeling as actually investing, even though only one of those things moves any money anywhere. There's a name for this kind of thing in psychology. It's sometimes called the illusion of explanatory depth, or something close to it. Basically, people believe they understand something much better than they actually do, simply because the topic feels familiar. Money advice is everywhere now. It's on social media, in podcasts, in casual conversation. So people absorb the vocabulary, the phrases, the general shape of good advice, and that familiarity gets mistaken for actual competence. This is exactly why Kevin from before didn't feel behind. He probably felt financially aware most of those 20 years. He could talk about the market. He had opinions on interest rates. He genuinely believed he was handling it, because his brain gave him credit for understanding the plan. Nobody ever told him that understanding and doing live in two separate rooms, and only one of those rooms actually builds wealth. This is the real reason the simplicity gap stays invisible for so long. It doesn't feel like a gap while you're in it. It feels like competence. It feels like being on top of things. The wake-up call usually doesn't come until years later, when someone checks their actual balance and realizes all that knowing never turned into enough doing. Alright, let's dig even deeper, because there are actually 3 separate traps working against you at the same time, and nobody bundles them together like this. The first one is called present bias. It's a simple idea with a heavy effect. Your brain values money and pleasure today much more than the exact same money and pleasure in the future, even when the future version is clearly better. So when it's time to choose between investing $200 or spending it on something fun this weekend, your brain doesn't calculate it fairly. It treats today's fun like it's worth more than tomorrow's freedom, even though, on paper, tomorrow's freedom is worth far more. This is why a simple long-term plan keeps losing to small short-term temptations over and over for years. The second trap is analysis paralysis, and this one is almost funny once you see it. The formula for building wealth is so simple that it doesn't feel like it deserves respect. So people go looking for complexity, thinking real wealth must require some advanced strategy, a secret index, a clever tax trick, the perfect stock pick. They spend months comparing apps, reading forums, watching debates between experts, all while their actual money sits in a checking account earning almost nothing. The simple plan felt too easy to be legitimate, so people built a maze around it, and then got stuck wandering inside the maze they made. The third trap is the sneakiest one. I call it the identity trap. Some way along the way, knowing about money became its own reward. Being the person who understands investing, who can explain interest rates at a dinner party, who has opinions on the housing market, that feels good. It feels smart. It earns a little respect. And here's the problem. That good feeling doesn't require you to have actually invested a single dollar. You can enjoy being the smart one about money for years without your bank account changing at all. Put these 3 together and you get a strange but common person. Someone who genuinely understands money, who feels the pull of short-term spending more than long-term investing, who dresses up simple habits with unnecessary complexity, and who gets enough identity reward from just knowing that acting on it never feels urgent. None of this makes someone weak or foolish. These are just the normal wiring most people are born with. Nobody sits you down as a kid and explains that your brain will lie to you about today versus tomorrow, or that you'll dress up simple plans to feel legitimate, or that knowing will feel like enough. These traps are quiet, and they are patient, and that's exactly why so many smart, capable people still end up stuck in the simplicity gap. Let's follow Kevin and Dana a little further, because 10 years isn't the whole story, and neither is 20. The real cost of this gap only becomes fully clear once you stretch it out across a whole working life. At the 10-year mark, the difference between them already stings a little. Dana, putting in her steady $200 every single month, has around $34,000 sitting there. Kevin, doing his stop and start thing, maybe investing in 3 or 4 of those 10 years, has somewhere around $9,000. Not tiny, but already almost 4 times smaller. And at this point, most people would say the difference isn't a big deal yet. That's the trap. 10 years in, it still feels fixable. By 20 years, the gap stops being a gap and starts being a canyon. Dana is sitting around $104,000. Kevin, still doing his occasional bursts of investing, is somewhere near $20,000. Same starting knowledge. Same formula memorized word for word. But one person's money grew for 2 straight decades without interruption, and the other person's money kept starting over, again and again, never getting enough uninterrupted time to really build momentum. Now stretch it to 30 years, which is closer to a real working life. Dana's steady $200 a month has grown to somewhere around $244,000. Kevin, even with 30 years to work with, is likely sitting somewhere around $50,000 because sporadic investing just never gets the long, unbroken stretches that compounding needs to really take off. Look at that side by side. $244,000. $50,000. Same formula. Same starting knowledge. The only difference between these two people is whether the plan actually got followed, month after month, without permission from motivation or convenience. This is the part that should sit with you for a second. Kevin never did anything wrong on purpose. He never made one bad decision that ruined everything. He just paused a little too often, for a little too long, across 30 years. Small gaps, repeated constantly, quietly cost him almost $200,000. That's the real price of staying in the simplicity gap. It doesn't show up as one big loss you can point to. It shows up slowly, in the missing years, in the months skipped, in the plan that got understood perfectly but followed only sometimes. And by the time most people notice the size of that cost, decades have already gone by. So here's the big shift, the one that actually closes the simplicity gap once you see it clearly. Knowledge was never the valuable part. Execution is the valuable part. You could forget half of what you know about investing tomorrow and still end up rich, as long as the money kept moving every single month. That's the whole secret, and it's almost annoying how simple it is. So how do you actually become a Dana instead of a Kevin? You don't do it by reading more. You don't do it by finding a better strategy or a smarter app. You do it by taking your own willpower completely out of the equation. Here's what that looks like in real life. Set up an automatic transfer from your checking account to your investment account, the same day every month, right after payday. Not a reminder to invest. Not a note in your calendar that says think about investing. An actual automatic transfer that happens whether you feel motivated or not, whether you remember or not, whether the market is up or down that week. Willpower is unreliable. Automation doesn't care how you feel. Next, shrink the decision down to one repeatable action. Kevin's problem was never a lack of information. It was that every single month became a fresh decision. Should I invest this month? How much? Into what? That's exhausting, and exhausted people skip things. Dana didn't make 30 years of decisions. She made one decision, one time, and then let it run on autopilot for 3 decades. One choice, repeated automatically, beats 360 small choices made under pressure every single time. And here's the last piece, maybe the most important one. Stop measuring yourself by how much you know, and start measuring yourself by how consistent you've been. Don't ask yourself, do I understand investing well enough? Ask yourself, did the money move again this month? That single question matters more than any amount of financial reading you could possibly do in your spare time. This is genuinely good news, even though it might not feel like it at first. It means you don't need to become smarter to close this gap. You don't need a finance degree, or the perfect strategy, or some secret only rich people know. You need one automatic transfer, set up once, left alone, and repeated without interruption for a very long time. The formula was never the problem. It never needed fixing. The only thing that needed to change was making sure the doing didn't depend on remembering, motivation, or good mood on a random Tuesday. Set it up once. Let it run. That's how the gap actually closes. So let's bring this all the way back to where we started. The question was, if everyone already knows the formula, why does almost nobody actually get there? And now you know the answer. It was never about finding a smarter formula. Rich people did not discover some hidden version of investing that the rest of us missed. Getting rich is the same simple formula everybody already knows. Earn, spend less, Invest the difference. Leave it alone. The only difference is, some people actually do it, month after month, without waiting to feel ready. That's it. That's the whole secret hiding in plain sight. Not smarter. Just done anyway. So here's what I want you to do. And I mean actually do, not just nod along and close this video feeling informed. Pick one small amount. It can be $20. It can be $50. It doesn't need to be impressive. Then go set up one automatic transfer today from your checking account into some kind of investment account, timed for right after your next payday. That's the whole task. One transfer, set once, left alone. You don't need to fix your entire financial life this afternoon. You just need to close the gap between knowing and doing, one small automatic action at a time. Dana didn't start with the perfect plan either. She just started, and then she never had to think about it again. Now here's what I want from you. Down in the comments, tell me how many years you've known this formula without actually following it consistently. Be honest. 5 years, 10 years, 20. Doesn't matter. I'll read through and tell you exactly how close you are to closing your own gap and what it would actually take, in real numbers, for your situation. Because here's the truth nobody says out loud enough. You already know enough to get rich. You've known enough for a while now. The only thing left to change is whether the money moves this month, without permission for motivation, without waiting for a better time, without one more article or one more video promising a smarter way. There isn't a smarter way. There's just this way, done anyway. Comment below, and let's see how close you actually are.